Welcome to Get to the Hook. I'm your co-host, Charles Latibeaudiere.
And I'm your co-host, Eric Colley.
And this week's hook is something we will all be thinking about over the coming days.
Hopefully.
As we head, we should be, exactly. Because, look, I get it. It's the unofficial start of summer and people get hung up on that. But really, Memorial Day weekend is a time to honor our fallen heroes, our military heroes. And there turns out there are a lot of songs that have done exactly that.
And some based on very true stories.
Mhm.
Some of these are sad. It's going to be a little bit of a heavy one.
Little heavy, but you know what? I don't like to think of it as heavy. We're honoring people who deserve to be honored. So
Right. So we got to start with one of the most famous songs like this. And it was controversial in its day. It is still kind of controversial. This became more than just a tribute to a fallen soldier. We're talking about, let's play some of it. This is Staff Sergeant Barry Sadler, Ballad of the Green Berets.
Men who fight by night and day, courage take from the Green Beret.
And I would see where maybe, well, we should talk about when the song came out.
So it came out in 1966. It was partly inspired by a real soldier who died. He was Army Specialist James Gabriel Jr., died in April of 1962 in Vietnam, probably one of the first American casualties. I think he was the first Hawaiian citizen to die in Vietnam. And Barry Sadler was a medic in the Army, in the Armed Forces. He was in Vietnam. He was injured by a punji stick. It's the booby trap where you take sharpened bamboo and put it in a pit and cover it. Also, the stick was covered with feces deliberately.
So
he had an infection, came back to the U.S. to recover. While he's recovering, wrote this song. So 1966 is right when I think the war in Vietnam was really wrapping up. But the public hadn't fully turned against it yet.
Right. They didn't know enough about it yet.
Right. It was just like, we're supporting the troops. And it's so weird seeing the parallels between now and then, just how the country thinks and the polarization.
Well, think about, yes, right now and then, but you think about this song comes out in 66. 2 years later, this song probably is not getting the radio, certainly not playing on the radio the way it did in 66.
Yeah, it wound up being number one for 5 weeks. I think worldwide sold 9 million copies. It was a massive, massive hit. And it was a rallying cry for people who were, I think a lot of them in their minds were supporting the troops.
Right.
And they thought all these hippies hate America, they hate the troops. And the thing is that both sides cared about the troops.
Right.
Just one thought we need to support them while they're there because it's necessary. And a lot of those people who were a little bit older were the World War II generation.
Right.
And that's a very different kind of conflict.
War.
But still young people dying. And I think the young people who were being drafted, because you still had the draft then, were like, what?
Why are we?
The government's sending us to die for what?
Right. And that was, right. It was never really about the troops. It was about the government. The people who were protesting, they're protesting the government's decision to send troops over there. And certainly we should say, look, there were certain actions that happened in Vietnam that people were protesting actual military soldiers and what they were doing over there. But, you know, the other side of that argument is they were sent there.
War crimes. That's why they're called war crimes, because it's illegal to do. I mean, that's
right.
People are people. But yeah, it's just weird that, you know, at the dawn of the hippie era, have a
song like this
very patriotic song that was also politicized to become kind of a recruitment tool. Because at the end of the song,
I think a lot of people thought that's what it was. The people, I don't know how many people knew that that sergeant was an actual.
Yeah, Barry Sadler was a real staff sergeant.
An actual staff sergeant, because it almost comes off like a novelty song.
Kind of. And even musically, it sounds very out of place in 1966. The marching drums and the little choir behind him, and his delivery is very like 1950s kind of. It was sort of a throwbacky song even at the time.
Yeah.
And maybe that resonated with people too, and it made them think about Korea and World War II, and that generation's like, see, there's patriotism still alive.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, that does not change, you know, whatever your feelings on that song or Barry Sadler, who that's a whole separate episode, his life and death. He died in Nicaragua, got shot in the head in a cab, survived that. Allegedly, rumored was there trying to train the Contras during the Iran-Contra scandal. In 1978, he shot a guy in the head and killed him, a songwriter in Nashville. Served 28 days in prison for voluntary manslaughter. It's a whole weird, dark life that Barry Sadler lived 10, 20 years after this song. It was That's another
wow.
episode.
Okay. Look for that on a future episode.
Yeah.
Wow. All right,
But yeah,
Barry.
Battle of the Green Berets, I think the sentiment of a lot of it, and like I said,
Yeah.
knowing that it was inspired by the death of a real person.
Yeah.
Who, and like I said, 1962, probably had no idea what was really even going on over there. Like that was so early in that conflict, at least for America. In the 70s, we got one that people associate with Vietnam because it came out in 1974. The lyrics don't specifically state which war it's talking about, but it's pretty much the Civil War because there's little marching drums and whistles and flutes and things.
Things that weren't happening in the battlefield in Vietnam.
No, and they talk about like the band would pose in Union outfits, which is interesting because the song was written by two British guys. And it's about the American Civil War. As a #1 hit in 1974, this is a little bit of Bo Donaldson and the Haywoods version of Billy, Don't Be a Hero.
Billy, don't be a hero, don't be a fool with your life.
What an odd...
It's bubblegum pop. It's super
exactly.
catchy.
Bubblegum pop about the Civil War, written by British dudes?
Yeah, and the thing is, if you ever listened to the lyrics of that song, like really listened to all of it, the end of it is so sad. So it's this girl who's engaged to this guy, Billy, and she's saying, like, you've signed up, like you weren't drafted, you volunteered to go serve.
Mm-hmm.
When you're there, don't be a hero, come back, make me your wife, like just stay safe and come back to me, keep your head down. So in the last verse of the song,
I gotta be honest with you, I gotta start listening to some like
Billy, don't be a hero, don't be a fool with your life.
There's some
come back and make me your wife.
There's some 70s songs I need to go deeper than just the chorus. In fact, probably most 70s songs.
Most of these bubblegum songs had no depth. That's why it's weird that this one did.
I've heard that song like all my life, and I had no idea that that's what it was about. All I could tell you was the chorus. And I just assumed it was had something to do with like a love gone wrong or something.
Yeah, the love was wrong because he left. But then this is the saddest part of it. And it, on a deeper level, this might have been the experience for a lot of people, especially in 1974, coming off of Vietnam. She tells him, don't be a hero, do what you got to do, come back. She gets a letter. He has died in combat. He volunteered to go off and try and get recruitments to save his platoon and was killed. And in the end of the song, she throws the letter away. Because she's so devastated that he was so stubborn and made himself a hero and made himself a martyr.
Got it. Oh, and
yeah, like she's
Yeah,
like I told you not to do this, and now our lives are ruined. We're dead.
He went out and he had to be a hero.
And the letter's telling her, he died a hero, and she throws it away. I was like, why is this song so dark?
Let me tell you something.
Sounds like the Archies or something.
Here's what you don't have now, and this is why you need to have liner notes. All right, you need liner notes. This is the beauty of a vinyl record where they put in all the lyric sheets and you have it right there. Now, I know you're going to call me boomer or whatever. Like,
because you can Google
we have internet now.
But you have to go out of your way to do it. That's the thing. When you had
you would make the purchase and it would be right there for you.
You'd just be reading it while you were listening because what else are you going to do?
Right.
There was no internet. You didn't have a phone. Well, the phone was like a rotary phone.
And I wouldn't be walking around thinking that Billy was out cheating or something and that was why their love had fallen apart.
He dies and
she died a hero.
She throws his letter away and is brokenhearted probably the rest of her life.
What an odd thing that...
To make it so catchy.
Well, that these British songwriters decided to use the American Civil War as the setting for this story. Why didn't they do that? Maybe Vietnam? They felt like Vietnam was too controversial.
Maybe they felt that was too political at the time. I mean, this came out in the spring of '74, and Vietnam for America was pretty much winding down.
Winding down, right?
Maybe they didn't. I don't know.
Oh, I wish I knew. They're like, hey, what's a war that we could put this in? I don't know, mate.
The American Civil War? Yeah. And the funny thing is the original, so that Bo Donaldson and the Haywood had the #1 hit with it, but it was a cover. The original version was by a group called Paper Lace. Their version wasn't a big hit in America, but then later in '74, they would hit #1 with the song The Night Chicago Died, which is about a kid whose dad's a cop and goes off and fights gangsters. And at the end of that song, you're like, the mom's watching the clock and all the cops have been killed in this bloody massacre. And at the very end, that one's kind of happy. The dad comes home. He makes it back at the end of the night. So Paper Lace had a thing for these.
They were very big on storytelling.
British groups who loved American historical story songs. I don't know.
Hey, we're an interesting country.
Yeah.
You can put it that way.
Yeah. This next song is a little heavier. And even if you didn't know what it was about, musically and the vocal performance, you knew this song was on another level. The first time I heard it, I remember just being like, what is this? And it is a true story. And the central character of this did not die, but it's about how it ruined his life anyway and all of his friends who died. This is a little bit of Alice in Chains' Rooster.
Here they come to snuff the rooster.
And that would come on the radio in '93.
Right.
It was like
I
nothing
grabbed you by
else.
the throat.
Yeah.
You're like, you're going to pay attention to this song.
And then if you
That
see
was-
the video, again, set in Vietnam, so Jerry Cantrell, who's one of the main songwriters of Alice in Chains and did a lot of the vocals too with Lane Staley, it's about his dad, Jerry Cantrell Sr., whose nickname was Rooster. His grandfather had called him that.
Okay.
And this is, I mean, Jerry Cantrell Sr. survived Vietnam. I mean, the lyrics of the song talk about his buddies breathing their dying breath and all that. The sad story of this, and then also there's actually a kind of a happy story here. When he came back, as a lot of veterans did, he was a different person.
Yeah.
Because nobody knew what PTSD was at that point. They didn't, the World War II generation just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And they kind of were in the same boat.
Everyone was expected you get off the plane and you just go back to your life and everything's fine.
And as the song says, they spit on me in my homeland. The Vietnam soldiers did not come back as heroes
Right.
to a lot of people in this country. And Jerry says that it wasn't that his dad left him and his mom. The mom left the dad because it was just the household was too bad. And he goes, so I grew up through my adolescence just like, oh, my dad's not around, like, screw that guy, whatever. And he goes, as I, got a little bit older, I thought about it from his perspective when you were mature enough to kind of understand who he was and what he went through. So he writes this song and he goes, not based on anything, because my dad had never talked about Vietnam with me. It was just what I imagined it probably was like.
Based on other stories he'd heard from other soldiers and
So, but there's very specific, like he mentions Gloria sends photos of my boy. Like there's very personal references in the lyrics of that song. He goes, the first time my dad ever saw us play live, we did that song, and I don't think it had been released yet. He goes, and he stood in the back, and at the end of it, he takes his hat off and raises it, and he'd been crying the whole time. And Jerry goes, did I get anywhere close to what your experience was like? And he goes, you got too close.
wow.
And he said the first time I ever heard him talk about it himself firsthand was when we shot the video for the song. He came by and a news outlet wanted to do an interview with him because, like, oh, you're the inspiration for
Right.
this. And he goes, by that point, he was more comfortable to talk about it. He goes, it's the first time I ever heard him talk about it.
Talk about Vietnam. Wow.
And he says this song honestly changed our relationship, and they got much closer because of it.
How could they not?
How could it not?
Yeah.
I mean, to be so
So
estranged for
interesting
almost
that-
20 years.
And it's so interesting that he wrote it without having heard it from his father yet. Nailed it.
Yeah, and he'd heard
So
probably his
much
mom's side of it. That's why the references about the mom sending the pictures and
Right.
and all that.
Huh.
Yeah, an intentionally funny
Wow,
story
that's
about
heavy.
this.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That part about them meeting, talking about how close he got to it.
Yeah.
I knew what the song was about, but I didn't realize that it was his father.
Yeah.
And that they wow. Huh.
I do remember when this song was out,
That is-
and I was old enough to know like how heavy the subject matter was. I had a little cousin, and for context, our grandfather had a chicken farm, and so my cousin, who was like 12 at the time, he was like a little kid. He saw the video for this song, and he goes, and the video's Vietnam. And my cousin goes, man, I don't think they should be allowed to say that. I'm like, say what? That we went to Vietnam to kill chickens. I was like, no, it's the nickname of the soldier. It's because this chorus, here they come to snuff the rooster. So
Right.
he took that very
Leave those
literally.
roosters alone.
But he'd grown up around roosters his whole life. So that's, I'm amazed he kind of even knew what Vietnam was.
You want to hear
at that
some
age.
chicken farm stories?
Yeah.
You
You got a chicken farm story?
I have a lot of chicken farm stories.
From
Grew up on
Jamaica?
a chicken farm in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just trading chicken
That's it.
farm.
Yeah, we're not gonna. So a guy from West Virginia and a guy from Jamaica walk in and they start talking about chicken farms.
There's probably a lot of cultural overlap there you'd be surprised by.
No, I'm sure there is. But again, we digress.
So, yeah. It's,
Let's push. Let's push forward, please.
yeah. This song surprised me. Not an artist I expected to do a song like this. At the time they did it, talking about the Isley Brothers, they did a song called Ballad for the Fallen Soldier, and it came out in 1983, and it was on their Between the Sheets album, which is, that album is just sex
Okay.
banger after sex banger.
Right.
And then in
So
the
to
middle of the
speak.
record, they just slip in this song, not just about Vietnam or soldiers who died, a very specific thing that is also devastating, and I'm sure families who heard this that connected with it felt seen. It's about Ronald Isley's character is talking about his dad who was missing in action. So he writes his congressman, and the congressman says, he's missing, but don't give up hope yet. And remember, this song came out almost a decade after we left Vietnam. So here's like a section of this song where he talks about never giving up that hope.
It just went on to fight for the things we thought were right. So determined to survive, I believe he's still alive.
That just seems like a separate level of hell to all this. Is determined to survive, I believe he's still alive.
Yeah.
Because if losing a loved one in battle is
POV
one
on
thing,
this whole
but for
thing.
all the the missing in action soldiers, you just get there's never closure.
Yeah.
And but this song for 9 years, at least 10 years, you're just holding out that hope. Maybe he's somewhere.
Did they write it based on someone they know?
I couldn't. I looked that up. I
mean,
couldn't
there's
find if
certainly
it's a true story or not.
the era where they would have known people
Absolutely.
who were and families that were going through this.
And it wouldn't have been. I mean, it wouldn't have been their father because he would
No.
have been much too old by the 70s and late
Right.
60s. But interesting, I thought the Isley brothers included that, and from that very specific perspective, all these families that just never got confirmation.
What year did that come out?
1983.
Huh.
And
I mean, there were other songs around that time that were dealing with it. I think there were, like, their generation
yeah,
knew people, or in some cases, they are actually, in the army or they're in the armed forces. But that's when a lot of those songs were coming out. And
I think
So maybe
because
they
maybe you
just-
had like enough distance from it to kind of process all the feelings. Because in the 70s and the 60s, it was still going on.
boy,
It
that was
very,
Boy,
very touchy.
If you were listening to that album and you had one mood going, and then all of a sudden you're like,
You got between
turn the
the
lights on,
sheets
turn
and
the lights
Shizzy
on, honey,
Lover.
turn the lights on.
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
we need a break.
But then the end of the song is Ernie Isley doing just like the sexiest guitar solo. Like it's really good. So
Yeah.
maybe you get a little bit back in. No, I don't know. That's a real mood killer. It's a great song. And it's been like every Isley Brothers song, especially from that era. That song's been sampled so
sampled,
much.
yeah.
Jay-Z sampled it for a song a week ago. Drake and 21 Savage sampled it for Privileged Rappers. Lil Wayne and Future sampled it for Cross Me. Dozens of other rappers have sampled that song. Because the hook, they don't sample the lyrics.
Yeah.
Because
Right, that's a different.
that'd be a weird thing, a Vietnam song.
That's
but
not a good interpolation.
that is not a good interpolation, but it's a nice sample. Yeah, I don't know if that one's based on a true story. This last one we're going to talk about is, and this one's this is a pull on your heartstrings here. As you'd expect, there are a lot of country songs
I
about.
was gonna say we
soldiers.
can't dip out of this without doing a country.
Got to do country.
Yeah.
I mean, Billy Ray Cyrus, his breakout album, his debut album that was #1 forever, was called "Some Gave All."
Right.
That is what the title song is about. And especially by the turn of the century, you had after September 11th and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and all the
Toby
troops.
Keith.
You had Toby Keith, Big and Rich did a song. The Chicks had Traveling Soldier. Carrie Underwood had a really sad song about a woman you think is going to her wedding, but she's going to his funeral because he died in combat. Oof. Trace Adkins had one, but one that's sad, and I want to mention this one specifically because it is a true story, and this is a real soldier. There's a country singer named Lee Brice who's had several #1 hits on country radio. This song was one of them. It's a song called I Drive Your Truck. Hit #1 on country radio in 2013. It won the Song of the Year at the CMAs and the ACMs that year. And the song was, the woman who wrote it was inspired by an interview she saw with a guy named Paul Monty. And Paul was doing an interview talking about his son, Jared, who died in Afghanistan in 2006. He died trying to save another soldier. Obama gave his family the Medal of Honor for him. Like, it's a devastating
Right.
story. And so his dad, Paul, said that the one thing he kind of did to feel close to his son was drive his truck around. And it's weird because when you think
Right.
about it, driving someone else's car is oddly kind of intimate.
Especially if it's a loved one,
Someone who's passed
away.
Yeah. And
Ooh.
so the song, the lyrics, the song changed it just a little bit to be more about a brother than a son because Lee Brice wouldn't have been old enough to have a son
Right.
in Afghanistan at that time. And the little details in the lyrics about the 89 cents and change in the cup and the cup holder and the half full bottle of Gatorade rolling around on the floorboard and a dirty baseball cap and an army T-shirt in the back seat. Those,
All right, play the clip before I start. Like you got.
I'm not done yet, Charles. Okay, let's play the clip. The clip is about that closeness and how this is how the
Eric's
father
trying to
chooses
pull a
to
Barbara
relate.
Walters on me over here.
Mama asked me this morning if I'd been by your grave. But that flag and stone ain't where I feel you anyway. I drive your truck.
Are you okay? Charles.
Very sad.
Oh, I got a little
No,
kicker here for you.
it's-
There's a sad, it's sad but also sweet footnote to this story. So this song came out in 2013. Well, it came out in 2012, hit number 1 in 2013. Jared Monty died in 2006. His dad, Paul, died in 2022. And when Paul died, 2 of Jared's Army buddies drove the truck in the procession.
All
That's,
right.
You know,
It's a pretty strong button there.
that's a pretty strong button.
I just, that really hits I've had family members who are in the military, and just, it is something that all friends and family members of people who are in the armed services always think about this. And that song just, I don't know, just struck a note with me. But
And it's because it's such a, there's so many like very jingoistic, patriotic,
right.
and there's
that's
nothing
not
wrong
what
with that,
is.
but
And
that's a very personal human touch to that
Right.
kind of grief and how
which
you
is
choose to.
what is far more, to me, that song and a story like that tugs at your heartstrings way more than, no offense to Lee Greenwood, I'm not, but that song,
Yeah,
it's two different things, and one is personal that everybody can relate to,
Right.
regardless of what your politics are.
and that's the thing.
Wow.
On Memorial Day, you see people will post the pictures of like Arlington, or you see the sea of the white crosses, and
Yeah.
that's just seeing that, and the enormity of it is very somber. But I think sometimes some people, not everybody, you kind of forget that every one of those crosses is a story, and there's a
Yeah.
family affected by that. And it's nice that there's music
That is exactly
It's
what
comfort
you
for
just said
people.
is exactly what I thought. That if you've ever been to Normandy,
I have,
and
and that one especially
that-
because you're standing on that cliff looking down at the beach where most of those people died.
right,
It's such an overwhelming,
it really is.
it's so many emotions.
All right, before we go, honorable mention. I don't know why Eric decided he wanted to diss our good friend Billy Joel. And
because-
did not include what, just because it's been played too much?
No,
And it is a different tone, certainly.
yeah,
Good Night Saigon, but
the We Will All Go Down Together, the
Yeah.
camaraderie of those guys,
Yeah.
and you have to have each other's backs. It's the only way you survive it.
exactly. Anyway,
So when you're at your barbecues,
when
and you're doing your online
barbecue,
sales,
you're doing your
just
online
remember
sales.
the reason that we have this holiday.
Yes, the reason for the season, as they say. So we wish everyone a wonderful, safe Memorial Day weekend, and enjoy yourselves.
Yeah, and
And
Charles is
honor-
gonna go cry in the bathroom.
I'm going to go listen to some Lee Bryce, and thanks, Eric. I'll be crying on the way home. That's
You're
cool.
welcome.
We'll see you next time on Get to Know It.